Welcome back to another episode of Hail Yes, a Michigan football and basketball podcast by the Detroit Free Press. I am Andrew Burkle, of course joined by our Michigan beat writer, Tony Garcia. And Tony, the news has slowed down a bit, but I don't think you've got any less busy the last few days here as we prepare for Christmas on Thursday and New Year's the week after that, a bowl game coming up, basketball going on, press conferences. I could go on and on, but it continues to be a busy time, right?
It does. It often is around, like, I always find that my busiest months are November and December because that's when basketball and football overlaps. It's just very rare that you have the number one basketball team in the nation simultaneously with a firing and an arrest and a coaching search in the football program and a bowl game. So it is kind of a you-know-what storm lately, but that's the way she goes.
A coaching search, right? I mean, a coaching search we've been trying to cover and all that goes in with that.
I might be half functioning right now because I thought I mentioned that, but I must have just thought it in my head. Yeah, no, there's been a ton going on. I am hoping we're recording this 9 a.m. Tuesday, December 23rd. I say this sort of breaking the rule that we learned when we were at our TV station, WLNS in Lansing. You don't ever say it's a slow news day. You don't ever say nothing's going on unless you are ready for something to hit the fan. I am hoping on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I might get something close to 48 hours just to be with family and do nothing. So with that said, it won't be long after this hits your feed that Michigan gets a new coach because that's the way this works. But we do have an update on that about timeline and what to expect a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not superstitious, as Michael Scott would say, but I'm a little stitious, and I worry that you just may have jinxed us. So hopefully we dodge a bullet and you get your time with your family. Much overdue. You've been hustling on this like nobody's business, and anybody who's not been paying attention to all of Tony's coverage, please do. I mean, I'm proud of a lot of the work we've been doing over the last few weeks. So with that said, we're going to start with the latest and kind of work back here. Yesterday, Monday, as we already said the date, so we might as well just date ourselves here. Biff Poggi has a press conference where, he continues to be open and really honest with his ambitions. Talked about wanting to be the next head football coach at Michigan. Talked about things need to change. So what was the tenor in the room and what were the major takeaways from this press conference?
It was sort of the same drill as the week before when we met with the players, where one of the program staffers prefaced like, hey, there's obviously an ongoing investigation, just so you know, he might not be able to answer everything. But I just wanted to reassure people because last week on last Thursday, when the media advisory came out about the players meeting on Friday, there was like some bold underlined letters about like players likely won't be able to talk about this investigation. Thank you for understanding. And a lot of people thought that Michigan was just trying to tell us what to ask. I was refreshed that when we got there, they did tell us like, hey, we are not trying to tell you guys what you can and can't ask. This is just what's going on. And so they have been instructed by like people in the building and stuff to not talk about certain things. But neither day, on Friday and on Monday, there was not one pushback on any question, and everybody answered things. And I think Biff really sort of set the tone with that Monday, saying everything that happens in this building has to be reevaluated, quite frankly, because it is not upstanding. He said, he's like, let's call it what it is. It's been 5 years of a malfunctioning organization. Those are the most honest, blunt, and pointed comments to something that is not positive, right? Like, of course, it's easy to talk about how great the players have been in the last few years, especially like some individuals and during the national championship season and all those great runs from 21 to 23. But just the way he really seemingly called a spade about what's happened the last handful of years did show more accountability than I have ever seen. I've written pieces dating back 4 years when Matt Weiss was getting arrested and when the first NCAA investigation was going on. And then to different arrests. We don't need to go down the line. But I've written about how like this Michigan athletic department and football program needs accountability. What Biff did was the closest thing I had seen to that in my time here. And then, he was even honest about other things, just talking about how nobody in the football program had fun in he doesn't know how long, talking about that. I asked him about the closest of the staff, and he said, as far as close, I wouldn't say that. It was really airing out a lot of the dirty laundry, so to speak. And he was just talking about how, and we'll get into it as far as coaches and stuff, but Biff, he stumped for the job. Biff has publicly stated that he does want to be the next head coach of Michigan football. It is a 180 from the fall when he was interim, and we were asking him like, hey, like, you ever want to get get back on the horse after the way things went at Charlotte? He's like, honestly, I really love my sort of father figure, grandfather of the program role, because he gets to oversee people and things. And then he still has enough time to be with his grandchildren, like on the weekends and late at night, which is not something you have time for, or I should say not something you should have time for as head coach of Michigan football, at least not a lot of it. But he's now ready. And he was banging. I'm not going to do it because I know it's going to make the audio quality sound bad, but he was banging is just too strong of a word, but tapping aggressively on the lectern as he said, I want to fix this program. And so he feels like he's the man for the job. I understand why there's a lot of questions about that, but those are the things that stood out to me from Monday. Him publicly saying he wants the job, publicly talking about the lack of continuity among the coaches, the lack of fun the team has had, and the issues for a number of years. And so I appreciated just from someone who is always having to decipher what's real, what isn't real. And there's still more questions about who knew what and when. I asked Biff about that. He got pretty upset, frankly, about how if the staff was close and Sherrone was being seemingly so brazen with some of this, how is it that nobody did know? And that's when he said, I wouldn't say that the staff was close. And also he's like, he was pretty fired up about it. He's like, I don't want to answer like a leading question like that. I must have phrased it poorly. I wasn't trying to lead him anywhere, but fair enough. It won't be the first question I don't word well, and it won't be the last. But I just wanted to understand from his perspective. And he was saying that the staff was shocked. Later in this episode, we'll get into whether or not we think that's true based on other things that we've reported and heard. But largely, very refreshing, very honest, seemingly, and just he's a good speaker. He can speak in front of a room very, very well.
Yeah, I'm glad you finished on that actually, because I wanted to kind of play devil's advocate, might be too strong of a word, but sometimes being in a room and listening to somebody speak can be an advantage. I would say most of the time. And sometimes not hearing it in person and, watching the clips and listening to it back and then reading the clips and reading the quotes can be a way to remove yourself from kind of how it's said and more about what is said, because there were some things that stuck out to me, particularly, I'm just reading the story you wrote on freep.com, right? It's like, because he says, I know what the HE double hockey sticks I'm doing. I have a long 10-year history of this place. I want to fix this place. Let's call it what it is, a malfunctioning organization. All fair things. We love the honesty. We appreciate it. Especially, we should say, when, Ward Manuel and Domenico Grasso have not held a press conference, right? The Grasso had the video that he sent out, but there's been no accountability from the leadership at the top. So that's left the players and Biff out there to answer these questions. So on a certain level, I greatly respect them actually going out there and being honest about it. But it did kind of, my journalism instincts kind of flared up a little bit, because it was like, okay, well, by all accounts, Biff was the culture guy. He called himself a babysitter. He said, if Sherrone's in a room, I'm in the room with him. When we talked about it, when he was filling in as the interim this last fall. Those were his words, right? And then for him to say, let's call it what it is, a not very close staff, a malfunctioning organization. But I also saying, I've been here 10 years. I know how to fix it. Well, not that he can be solely held responsible because he wasn't the head coach. He was in and out. But certainly of the people currently in the building, he would be near the top of the list because he was there under Jim Harbaugh dating back to 2016. He was there under Sherrone Moore last year, towards the end of the year and throughout this whole year. He served as the interim head coach. He had a strong voice. So some of it just rang a little hollow to me. And maybe I'm being a little too harsh. Maybe that's just me picking through the words a bit too much, as us journalists tend to do sometimes. But it kind of didn't have the same takeaway for me versus like when you're listening to him, he has a very good speaking tone and is very relatable, right? And that helps him a lot. But I think some of what he said, you could pick apart pretty easily compared to what he said in the past.
I think a lot of what you just said is very fair. And it's sort of, if you were just hearing him for the first time, right? And like maybe like some of these parents are or other people, you can hear that there's passion in his voice. You can hear that he seemingly means the things he says. And you could just be moved by what it is. But I think a lot of the points you made, now he was here off and on, right? Like, so from 2017 to 2020, he was gone at St. Francis Academy. And then 2023 and 24, he was gone with coaching Charlotte, North Carolina, Charlotte. But he was here as an analyst in 2016. He was associate head coach 21, 22. And then he came back late in 2024 ahead of the bowl game and has been associate head coach all year this year. So he's had 3 separate stints here and half the time, essentially, over the past decade. And in 2021, 22, that is when, the fallout of the sign stealing came in 23. It all dated back for all 3 of those years, like, right? In 21, in 22, and 23. Sherrone's, some of his outbursts and things that have manifested itself in poor ways, which I wrote about on Freep.com, we'll discuss shortly. That's happened since the beginning of this year, since before spring ball in 2025. And the main story, one of the leading color stories in that piece, I was not told directly that Biff was in that room, but the coaches were in that room with some major fallout between Sherrone and Wink. And so, I mean, you'd think that, like you said, if Sherrone's in a room, he's in a room. I mean, that was a great point you made. And so I understand why anybody would be skeptical, given, I mean, hey, he is trying to get this job, right? So he is trying to do everything in his power to look like the guy to fix it. How can you look like the guy to fix it if you've been around for so many of the skeletons in the closet? It's a tough place to be. But I've seen a lot of people in this building recently choose not so secret option 3, which is deny, deflect, and defend what's happened. And he didn't do any of those things. And so I think while it is fair to say, hey, a lot of this happened somewhat under your watch, so maybe you shouldn't be considered for it, that's fair. But also, hey, if you truly feel how you feel about this and you know about the problems that have happened, perhaps you can know how to not repeat some of these things. You can see what it looked like when it was good at times under Jim, maybe some things that you would do differently than Jim did. Certainly know what it looked like when it was bad under Sherrone. What would you sort of put together? So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we want to go into coaching search stuff now or not, just very briefly, but I've been saying to people, I think the more that time passes, it's just, I mean, that percentage chance that was Biff Poggi taking over as interim was seemingly 1%. And as a full-time head coach, I would have said it was 0.1%. Now, with the way the coaching carousel has gone, Michigan striking out on Kalen DeBoer, striking out on Kenny Dillingham at Bama and Arizona State, respectively, their options are fewer and farther between. And it's just the likelihood of it is increasing. It just is.
Yeah. And I think just we should go to the coaching search here now, because we kind of it's a natural next evolution because Biff is now such a big part of it. But, I don't think that he should be blamed for trying to go for the job. And like you said, he had to say what he had to say, but that's his job, is to try to say what he has to say. And I think it sometimes can be our job to say, okay, well, here's why he said it. And this is why you could maybe read between the lines here of why it might not check out. Right. So that's kind of why I didn't want to try to be like just devil's advocate for the point of being devil's advocate. But I think that it's our job sometimes to point that stuff out,
all the time. If we are just repeating what they are saying with no added context, what do you need us for? We are the ones who we get paid to follow this, to know these people, to understand what's going on, what's being said, what it means, how it could manifest itself. No, I don't think you were defending yourself, but you don't need to at all. Everything you just said is completely valid.
Yeah. So anyways, back to Biff, back to the head coaching search. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, I think it's safe to say you've heard about Kalen DeBoer beating Oklahoma in the college football playoff in convincing fashion after going down 17-0. And there's just nothing to connect him to this Michigan job at this point, where outside of the rumors, he just keeps saying no, and it just keeps getting further and further outside the realm of possibility. Could we all be shocked? Could it happen? Sure. We've seen some crazy stuff.
I wouldn't even say so anymore. I've been told by multiple people it is over.
Yeah. I'm hesitant to say over because of some of the things we've seen in the last shocking developments and all this other stuff, so I never say never anymore, and especially in college football, but it's pretty close to never. Kenny Dillingham just keeps saying no. He signed a new contract. We think that one's over, right? So that leads us to Biff, who it would have been easy to say, hey, this is guy who was described as Jim Harbaugh's consigliere, right? Like he's way too close to this thing. Well, there's two important circumstances that I think have to be considered. One, the timing of it all and the candidate pool that had just been it was literally like a deck of cards that had just been shuffled. I mean, it's kind of like a cliche, but it's very true. Like so many things had been moved around, people who signed or didn't move. So Michigan came in at a really awkward time. That's the first factor. The second factor is who's hiring this coach. And by all accounts, still Warren Manuel. Michigan is making it clear that this investigation is going to the top, that they're going to, from Jenner and Block, is going to continue to look. And it's beyond fair to question how much time will Warren Manuel be there for the next football coach. Not saying he's going to be fired imminently or anything along those lines, but I think it's fair to question how long of a partnership that may be, right? So would it make sense? And do they throw the interim tag on there? Do they just, if it doesn't work out, say Biff is retiring after the end of next year, whatever it is, does it make sense to use Biff as a short-term resolution to a long-term problem? And it seems like that's becoming to be a more and more realistic option, even as people like Jeff Brom and other. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of good coaches out there who, could put their name in the hat. But is there a good fit at this point? Maybe it's just Biff, right?
Yeah. I think Brom is another name that really, really needs to be considered. He is a fantastic coach. He has not gotten the credit he's deserved for what he did at Purdue, winning in any notable way at Purdue, which has not won a Big Ten game since 2023. It's going to be 2026 next week. That's a long time. Louisville they've been pesky. Didn't they beat Miami this year, right? Like kind of knocked them out of the almost knocked them out of the playoff, I should say, because Miami's obviously still in it. But at the time we thought they had knocked them out. This guy can coach. He can coach quarterback, certainly. And so he is an option. And then Kyle Whittingham at Utah. If he wasn't on the other side of 65, he is 66 right now. I think he would be getting some serious consideration just as a program builder and as a guy with an identity. Utah, like, what you're going to get with Utah football, just like really sound, good defense, an offense that isn't going to be out of the world explosive, but often puts up points. I mean, Utah was in the college football playoff mix this year again. I think he would have been an option. But to your point, it feels like, and like I was saying earlier, it feels like there's reason that Biff Poggi could be a good stopgap, is the phrase I've been using. He has been the one meeting with players individually, Zooming with parents, texting with the incoming recruiting class and meeting with those parents, right? He is the one, like, bubblegum and rubber bands, just like holding this ship together while all of this is going on and falling apart. And he also, another thing he did on Monday, which I thought was pretty smart and just felt like very businessman-like. So where we meet is in the Towsley Museum inside of Schembechler Hall. I'm going to do the thing with my hands, so hopefully you're watching on YouTube or wherever we put this up. But Schembechler Hall is all in the back. You walk through the front doors. It's the Towsley Museum. You turn to the left, and there's like a cutout. I should know a more formal word for this type of room, but there's a section that opens up above from the lobby of this building. Above the lobby, it's like a vaulted ceiling, and so the second floor is open, and there's and all the coaches' offices are up there, and there's like a little half wall that you can like look over, right? Like if you're in the second story of a house and it's like a balcony sort of situation. When Biff was talking the other day, General Manager Sean McGee was there, Pastor Robbie Emery was there, John Jansen was there. The other day, Devin Gardner was in the building. And so like a lot of people who have been affiliated in and around the program were watching, and Biff was making the point like, hey, this transfer portal thing is happening right now. Like people think it opens on January 2nd. Every major college program in the country is in contact with people who they want right now. They're back channeling through agents. And he was sort of saying like, you got to get your guy in now in order to make this happen. And just quickly on the timeline, Ward addressed the team on Monday, and he said their hope is to have a coach sometime between Christmas and New Year's. So that gives about a week for all of this to wrap up. But just to put a bow on the Poggi thing, it could make sense for a 1 year, like he's the one holding the team together. Maybe the players don't transfer out. Maybe nobody more opts out of their national letter of intent. He knows what you need. Maybe Michigan throws some money. I mean, Michigan has plenty of money, right? Like grab a couple receivers, But the problem is you need a new offensive coordinator too, right? And so nobody knows what kind of offensive system they're going to be running. And you got to get a head coach before you get an offensive coordinator. And really you want to know what's happening with the AD before the coach, before the OC, and they don't have a president. So literally every level is in flux right now. The president should be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks. And then it just remains to be seen what happens with Ward and the athletic department. So I know that was semi-long-winded, but there's a lot of elements and layers playing into this. And I think it's important to look at them all. And then you could, even what you could do with Biff is you put a 1-year interim tag on him. Michigan has a very tough schedule next year. They play Oregon. They play Ohio State on the road. They got Penn State. Who knows if they'll be any good, but Matt Campbell can coach, as we know. Maybe Michigan State. I mean, how many years have we said that? Might have a pulse this time with a new regime. They got to play Oklahoma. That game's at home, but Oklahoma's not going to be easy. I mean, this is a tough schedule. And I think they might have Indiana. I should know that offhand. But if we can get research on that, Andrew. But
yeah, I'm pulling it up here.
So the point is, if Biff is able to somehow win, right? Say somehow they go 10-2, like everything works perfectly. They go to the CFP. I mean, he might have earned the stripes. And if not, if they go 7-5, if they fall on their face, he was the guy who sort of held some pieces together. And then you are at the front of the coaching carousel, not the back of it. And all year long, you are talking to everybody under the sun about who could possibly be interested in it. And then the final day of the regular season, before bowl games start, before the national signing period opens and the early class is signed, you get your guy. And then you strike while the iron's hot in that way.
Kind of similar to how MSU had hired Fitzgerald the same day they fired Jonathan Smith, right? Like they clearly had something worked out there already. And
it doesn't happen in 5 hours. Yeah.
He's announced on Tuesday, and then, everything goes from there. It's, even though it felt like MSU is behind in the thing, well, it's like if you have the guy picked out, you can be ready to go. And I'm assuming they would do something similar unless they wanted to sign on even earlier, right? So anyways, looking up here, classic Michigan 8 home game schedule next year, Tony. It's only 4 trips for you next year at Minnesota, at Ohio State,
Not
at
mad
Oregon,
about it.
and at Rutgers are the road trips. And then you have Western, Oklahoma, UTEP, Indiana, as you mentioned, Iowa, MSU, Penn State, and UCLA at home. So yeah, not an easy schedule.
Yeah, and I want to point out selfishly for 10 seconds, from my perspective, that is the perfect travel schedule. Ohio State is an awesome place to travel. Eugene is the one Big Ten town I've not been to yet. I'm going next month when Hoops goes there, but going to Autzen Stadium, very cool. Rutgers, that's New York. That's easy as can be. Minneapolis, Delta Hub, direct flights, frequent all day. That's a perfect travel schedule. It's not, like this year, we were going to Norman and Lincoln and all the way out to LA, although that was cool as well. And so it was just some longer, like a lot of connecting. I had to work around not connecting in different places. And so nobody cares. That was far too long, but that's a wonderful travel schedule next year. Just want to
no doubt, and fun for the fans too, for sure. So, okay, let's take a quick break. We've got a really important story to talk about next, so we'll talk about that on the other side of the break, and as well as quick bowl talk for the Citrus Bowl coming up next week. All right, welcome back, Tony. As soon as you caught a breath after the crazy Wednesday, December 10th there, where Sherrone was fired, then arrested, then we had the arraignments and all this stuff. Ever since then, we've been like, okay, well, let's rewind here. What the heck happened? How do we get to this point? And pretty quickly, you started talking to people and figuring out that, yes, this was the absolute mountaintop of things getting bad, or I guess you could say cellar. But things have been brewing for a long time, and there were some shocking details. The one that really stuck out to me when I was reading and editing your story that should be on freep.com not right now, check it out. You want to read this if you're a Michigan fan, was a story about Wink Martindale, who is just very respected, not just in college football, but in the NFL. He's been around forever. I mean, the guy knows football, right? Like the confrontation with him and Sherrone, where Sherrone ends up leaving in tears. He's followed by the alleged staffer who he was having the affair with back to his office. It was just such a crazy story, and really kind of was a good look into like, okay, this is what that building felt like, right? So tell me a little bit about what you found in your story and some of the key takeaways just for a program that was in dismay.
Yeah, no, you set it up. I mean, I think the point was, because we always want to go like, what's next? And we're always like, oh, what's next? What's next? But sometimes I feel it's important to say, how did we get here? How did this happen? And so even with coaches who have been instructed not to speak about what's going on, so it made it difficult to talk to like current staffers because, as you'll see in the story, I texted Wink asking him about his interactions. He was very respectful, but he's just like, hey, like my agent, my lawyer advised I not respond. There's some anecdotes about Steve Kasula, who I just want to say has always personally been good to me, who I've liked working with. He's one of the good talkers on staff as well, and always has something I find interesting to say. But there were some stories that I had heard from people who were formerly in the building that just didn't look the best. And while some of that is on Steve, or a lot of it, you could say, just about the way it sounded like he has treated people in the building, I think the overarching point of including that was to show that there was just not a ton of respect for the top, for the person who is supposed to set the tone for this program, that there was just no professional decorum that was mandated. It's not to say that there were not a ton of professionals in the building or that there's a lot of respected coaches who are good people and good coaches, but things were just unraveling behind the scenes. Really, the entire 23 months Sherrone was in charge. So I spoke to multiple former staffers, a high-ranking university official, parents of players, women that Sherrone was DMing with on Instagram, one of them who was an OnlyFans model, and a member of the athletic department, and then two different coaches who I just texted with, but they were unable to comment. So more than half a dozen, between like 6, 7, 8, 9 people who I was trying to source this thing through. And there were others behind the scenes who just didn't quite make the cut of this story. But this was a man in Sherrone Moore, now that we have sort of the hindsight to look at it with, who seemed to check all the boxes for and I'm not invoking these names and these two names in the same way, but kind of like a Dusty May, someone who's gone from GA to assistant at a lower level school, assistant at a lower level school, position coach, kind of an offensive line coach, coordinator, and then head coach. But that's really where the similarities stop with him and Dusty. So someone who had boots on the ground and worked their way up at different programs in different levels. But Sherrone was clearly in over his head from the start. And this is a person who was emotionally volatile. We thought it was, or some thought it was, I don't know, cute or endearing when he had that complete emotional outburst following the Penn State game. You could sort of justify it. That was really the world's true introduction to Sherrone Moore in 23. And you could say wow, he loves Jim, or man, this place means a lot to him or these players. Looking back on it, it's kind of eerie. And it's more like, this is a guy who cannot control his emotions. And there's nothing, I'm a crier. Everybody in my family knows it, but not over that. I'm like a wedding crier. You know what I mean? I just feel emotions pretty deep, but that was alarming. And it just sort of spoke to a bigger picture. He had meltdowns with the staff that you were sort of referring to with Wink Martindale. We can get into that a little bit more later. He was paranoid about just coaches talking about recruits in his building. He wasn't speaking to Wink Martindale, I was told, for almost the final month of the season. That's not great for a head coach and a defensive coordinator when you are still chasing a college football playoff. I spoke to someone who he was DMing on Instagram as early as 2019. A lot of this was thought to just be this affair for the last 2 years. This is someone who has not had his eye on the ball for 6 years, 7 years. It kind of makes you wonder how he was able to get so much done as offensive line coach, but it's just not as busy of a time. And the way I was putting it to someone the other day is, if you are the head football coach of Michigan, not that everybody should not be a family man, but all but written in your contract is Michigan football comes first, your family is what comes second, and there is not time for anything else. This man was making time for everything else, DMing women about trying to meet them in Houston on recruiting trips. A girl would follow him on social media and he would send them a smiley face. How is this what you're focused on? And parents felt it. I spoke to a parent of a player who said they were all messaging each other, saying that even by USC, they could feel that there was just a lack of focus. They were all asking each other, what is going on here? Like, how does this look like this? And so I'll leave it there in case I'm sure you have more questions, but it's all painted by the picture also of how he was hired. Jim Harbaugh leaves following the national championship. If you think this is late in the coaching cycle, it was almost a month after where we are right now when Sherrone got hired. And so Ward's hands were somewhat tied, and I think you could say that in terms of who he was able to hire, but he didn't interview anybody else. He only spoke to Moore for 2.5 hours in an interview. He told us that he sort of used Moore's quote on the job training in those Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State games when Jim was suspended in 23 as evidence that he can do the job. But clearly there's more to this job than just being able to lead a game plan that was put in by a well-insulated coaching staff on Saturdays. And it was the CEO levels of this where Sherrone failed with relationships with the coaches. I mean, I didn't write about this, but I think you could go as far as personnel decisions. Andrew Marsh was by far the best receiver on this team. He didn't play for a month. And then obviously just a lack of commitment to his family, to his job, and to himself.
Yeah, for sure. As you were talking, it reminded me back to some of the conversations we'd be having throughout the year where it'd be like, okay, something's wrong with this Michigan team. Like they just barely beat Purdue, but they keep winning. They keep winning. And I had that rant where I was like, it's frustrating to talk about because like everything my eyes are telling me and like all the stats are telling me like there's something that this Michigan team is not that good. And yet here they are, they keep winning. They're about to play in the college football playoff if they beat Ohio State. It just kind of it kind of makes more sense now, like for lack of a better way of saying it. Like, yeah, okay, well, clearly the floor of the coaching staff, the Wink Martindales of the world, who is a good NFL defensive coordinator. Like that guy knows how to call defense, right? Like the floor of the Michigan program was raising things to a certain degree. And really, even then, it still makes you think like it's kind of impressive they went 9-3 with everything going on. You know what I mean? With all that stuff going on, they went 9-3 and had a chance to play themselves into the 12-team playoff if they had beaten Ohio State. And, knowing everything we know now, watching all year, the only thing really making us think that Michigan had a chance was that like the gypsy curse they had kind of on this referee, right? Like this weird dynamic to it. But outside of that, like Michigan just did not have things buttoned down. And there's a million things I could, ask you more about. The article details them brilliantly, but it just, things were not going well. And it's going to lead to more questions about the ultimate question is, if you didn't know, how did you not know type vibe here, right? Where it's like something seems to have been missed between the athletic department and the football coach. Because it seems, and I think Biff's comments yesterday kind of enlightened that, where he's like, no, not a close coaching staff. Okay, well, that not a close staff, and kind of that's the PC or politically correct way of saying like, yeah, people knew things weren't going well. And the fact that hadn't got back to the athletic department or they had willfully blocked it from getting back. Either way, that's what my mind keeps coming back to as far as like, okay, maybe this is why things continue to bubble up to the surface.
Well, earlier in the season, the athletic department in the University of Michigan conducted an investigation into Sherrone in this alleged affair. Both parties vehemently denied it. Their phones were searched. No evidence was found. And at that point, I mean, now the cynic in me goes, well, I mean, how hard did you look? Like, because clearly, this happened. They've both admitted it to attorneys and law enforcement since then.
And I saw somebody pointing out that Sherrone had previously deleted text messages in the Connor Stallions.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yep. So he had a history. Like, if you hand over a phone with zero text messages, like, and there's certain things that universities have to follow rules and, they have to be more careful, and they have all these different, you can have a relationship with a subordinate if the subordinate starts the relationship, and there's all the,
but they also then have to report it.
Right. So I'm sure this is going to end up in some type of litigation, as these things tend to. But it's also, as you pointed out, the Michigan football head coach has different standards than a economic professor at Michigan, right? It's just true. That's why you get paid in the millions and not in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, and also, Michigan fire. I mean, like I was speaking to someone about this who is a high up person in the university, and they're like, look, Michigan fired the president over this. Like, this is something that the decision makers, the Board of Regents, takes very seriously. And if they're going to fire a president, they'll fire a head football coach for the same stuff. That's the front. The football program is the doorstep of the university. That is the most front-facing public part of what is a world-renowned university. This type of stuff can't be happening.
Let's call a spade too, though. Like, if he had been 12-0 and was in the college football playoff, maybe he gets suspended, and maybe and taking away everything that you wrote in that story, and things were going well, and he's a great leader, and everyone has great things to say about him. Maybe it's a suspension. Maybe it's a year suspension, right? Like if he was an Urban Meyer caliber coach at Ohio State or something, like you look for reasons not to fire him. And in this circumstance, he had given them other reasons in addition to this to show that like he was not an emotionally stable guy, and this was not a one-time mistake, right? That needs to be said as well. That like, yeah, I mean, there are outside circumstances to these things, right?
Yeah, nope, that's probably all fair. But I guess the last question and like what is going to continue to need to be investigated, and it's why Jenner and Block is coming in, is who knew what and when? Because the coaches and the players are all telling us that they were shocked when this happened, but frankly, through my reporting, I spoke to multiple people who used to work in the building, one of whom said that everybody who worked on Sherrone's side of the office, because there's like a couple wings of that layer I was describing earlier in the podcast, on the second floor in Schembeckler Hall. One person said that everybody, well, I mean, and this was this person's words, 100% knew about what was going on. And this person, I don't want to give away too much about who it is or when they were around, but they were around under Sherrone Moore, and they were privy to a lot of this information. And another person who was around under Harbaugh and Moore said that it was a really weird dynamic and one of those things where everyone knew, but nobody wanted to say it. And then talked about how this staffer sat, like the staffer's desk was 2 feet in front of Sherrone's office. And I mean, that's not, given the nature of her job title, that's not entirely unusual. But I guess the last detail is, so there's Wink Martindale and Sherrone Moore beef. I guess we'll just describe it real quickly. So Sherrone overhears, as the story goes, as I was told, Sherrone overhears a number of coaches speaking about a potential recruit in the hallway, and Sherrone's was not immediately in on the conversation. He calls a meeting and he starts going off on some of the coaches and people in the room, saying, we all need to be on the same page. You can't be talking about this stuff behind my back. And then Wink goes, we're not talking behind your back. We're trying to help you get the best recruits. And then Sherrone says, you don't know what the blank you're talking about. Wink responds and says, oh yeah, like that's me. I'm just the old guy. That's when Sherrone has a meltdown and starts screaming, you don't know how hard this is, the pressure to be the head coach at Michigan, the pressure that comes with it. He's crying, as I'm told, as the story happens. He slams his papers down and leaves the room to go to his office. The only person who followed him to his office at that time was the staffer whom he had an affair with. That doesn't appear to be a normal dynamic between a staffer and the head coach, even if this person is your assistant. And so the reason that example not only speaks to just the falling out of the relationships in the coaching staff, but sort of the signs that that are not that difficult to see that, hey, like what is going on here? And there's other things that I couldn't report, that you can't, just because you hear everything doesn't mean you can report everything. It does not mean I'm protecting anybody. I think if you read this story, you see I'm not in the business to just protect Michigan. I'm not in the business just to slander them. I'm just trying to paint the picture of how Michigan got to where it was. But things were going on for a long time. More might come out about the nature of this relationship and some things that went on. But I think I'm just going to stop it there. It was wild to hear people talking about the lack of control in Schembeckler Hall, the lack of communication, players not having fun, as Biff said publicly, coaching staff not being close. That's how you miss the college football playoff 2 years in a row.
Yep, no doubt. And just final thing to touch on this is just like the thing of players and coaches saying they're shocked. Like it's pretty easy to say you're shocked with everything that happened post-firing too. Even a firing is jarring because you almost kind of never think it's going to happen, right? So I don't even think that they're being dishonest when they say they're shocked. Even if they had heard the rumors or, seen certain things that kind of like that, you still don't expect it to happen. You're still like, oh, that's shocking. That happened, right? That'd be like the first word that comes to your mind, right? And especially everything that happened after the firing with the arrest and the charges and all that stuff. It was shocking, right? Like, I mean, that part was shocking to even somebody who was as close to it as possible, right? So I think that's kind of where some of that rhetoric comes from. But real quick, normally we'd be talking about a fun Michigan-Texas bowl game a lot more than this, but there's been some opt-outs and not as many as you might typically see in a bowl game. But Michigan, as you mentioned to me pre-show, the Jake Butt scars still are felt in that building as far as the bowl game, when he tore his ACL, when and basically ruined his draft projections and all that stuff. So what can you tell me about the opt-outs? And real quick, like, what are you looking forward to in this game? You're going to be down in Orlando for the Cheez-It Bowl, where Michigan may well name their head coach while you're down there too.
Yeah. So the 3 opt-outs are all on the line. It is Derek Moore, Gio El-Hadi, and Jayshawn Barham. So edges, Barham and Moore, and then left guard, Gio El-Hadi. All seniors, all expected to declare for the NFL draft, or upperclassmen, I should say. I think Jayshawn might just be, he's just a junior. But they're all going to be going to the NFL. Derek Moore has already publicly declared that he's going to the NFL. And so, I mean, if there's any semblance of optimism or hope for Michigan, it's that last year when Michigan went to a bowl game in Florida to play a team from the SEC, so there's a lot of parallels here, Michigan was without Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Colston Loveland, Will Johnson, and a few others. There are other opt-outs on offense. I think, maybe Tyler Morris didn't play, who was their leading receiver at the time for what that was worth. And they still beat Alabama. And so in a way, like, part of you is wondering, like, how can Michigan, with all of this going on, how can you focus? How can anything be, like, how could you even show up for this game, like, in a right mental state? But the other half of that is like, look, we just removed something that was very toxic from this building, weighing on everybody for a long time, indirectly or directly in different people's cases. Now we're doing what we love to do. You're on the Michigan football team. We're trying to get a 10th win. It'd be the 4th time in 5 years, for the first time since Bo Schembechler was coach, that we've done that. 4 10-win seasons in a 5-year span. Let's end this season on a high note. Let's take some momentum into next year. See some of the young talent that we have. I mean, I think some of the edge rotation will widen. It sounds like TJ Guy's not opting out, so I imagine TJ Guy will start. Dom Nichols will play on the edge a good deal. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of Nate Marshall, who was the 4-star edge, who popped early in this season. And then, I mean, he got in late in a handful of games, but wasn't able to make a huge impact. I think he'll be a name to watch for next year. And then on the offensive line, maybe it's, I wonder if they don't try to move Evan Link to left guard for this game. It might not be enough time. I think that move is in the offing for next season, because Michigan is just loaded at tackle for next year if they're able to hold on to everyone. Blake Frazier, Andrew Sprague are the 2 with experience. And then they have a pair of 5-stars behind them in Andrew Babalola and Ty Haywood, who one was injured, one who entered late and wasn't able to quite crack the rotation and redshirted this year. Those 4 as your rotational tackles could be very strong. And then you move, you need to replace El-Hadi, so you move Link into left guard. Crippen is gonna be out the center, so it feels like Jake Winera is probably gonna move from guard to center. Caden Strayhorn might be in that mix, but he'll be probably the center. And then you're just looking to plug in a right guard, whether it's Brady Norton, whether it's Lawrence Tatar, whether it's someone you get from the portal. And so just how Michigan shuffles this offensive line around. Biff said he loved this offensive game plan that Michigan is going in with. And Biff also was the guy who said that we're taking the training wheels off of Bryce. So something in me tells me Justice Haynes is probably not going to play. It's not official, but it's just kind of hard to see him playing in this one. Who knows about Jordan Marshall's shoulder and health? He was said to be all good and sounds like he should play. But I would not be surprised if Michigan airs this ball out 30, 35 times. There's nothing to lose other than the game, right? Like, you're not missing out on a CFP. You're not
the exhibition.
Yes, it is a glorified exhibition. That's not the spring game, right? So different than the spring game. You're playing someone else, and you've had the whole year of install. You've learned what's worked. You learned what hasn't. You should be playing near your best in this final game.
And people are watching too. People are watching, right? I mean, these games.
There's going to be a lot of Michigan, Texas. There's going to be a lot of eyes.
Yeah, and so I don't think we mentioned it, at least not during the bowl portion. Chip Lindsey also gone to Missouri, so Steve Kasula taking over as offensive coordinator. Just another reason perhaps to air it out. And then the marquee matchup will be, of course, you say matchup, but they aren't on the field at the same time will be Arch Manning versus Bryce Underwood, two former 5-star QBs, two guys that people have been circling for a long time as a future at the position. So that should be fun too. I'm sure we'll get a lot of conversation leading into the game on New Year's Eve.
I hope so. I hope there's time to actually talk football. It's just the way this has all been trending.
At least on the broadcast is kind of what I was thinking. Like,
that will be the talking point of all talking points.
Exactly. That's kind of what I was thinking.
And this is my last point. This is kind of a chance for Bryce to really go into the offseason with some momentum. I mean, Bryce clearly did not have the season anybody expected or wanted. 9 passing touchdowns, fewer passing touchdowns than the 3-man quarterback carousel combined for last year. There's not a person on earth who would believe that coming into the season. And then Arch Manning started the year terribly. Then the back half of the year, I think he had something like 13 touchdowns and 2 picks in his final 5, 6, 7 games. That's the growth that you look for a first year starter. Bryce really sort of plateaued. And in some ways, you could say actually took a step back because over his first 6 games, he had 7 touchdowns, 2 picks. His final 6 games, he had 2 touchdowns and 4 picks and a fumble. And so this is a chance to just be the man in the game. Right. And so Bryce Underwood is who I will be, as if I wasn't every game, but that's who my eyes will really be on.
No doubt. Real quick, we also talked about the number 1 basketball team in the country. Continued annihilation for the Wolverines. Dusty May's team just keeps rolling. They're kind of finishing up the non-conference schedule before Big Ten play gets underway here. You had an opportunity to do a really cool story that will be coming out sometime over the holidays, maybe towards the tail end of the holidays, just sitting down and getting a totally different perspective. So give us a little bit about that, and then we'll call it a day here.
Yeah, I'll tease it. And certainly tail end of the holidays. I'm thinking probably Jan 1, maybe the morning of Jan 2. Just
hey, that's still the holidays. People will still be saying happy holidays by that time.
That's right. That's right. I just don't want people refreshing their feed on Christmas Day saying it was supposed to be coming. No, it's absolutely still the holiday season. But yeah, quickly. So Michigan basketball has a director of analytics named Jacob Cohn, and he has a computer science background, came from Duke, worked for a basketball analytics firm the past couple of years, who Michigan sort of hired out in consulting capacity, and they brought him in full time this year. And Michigan's now top 5 in 2-point shooting, in 2-point defense. They only take the most efficient shots. And this guy, Jacob, I sat down with him, met with him before the game, spoke to some coaches about how he aids their whole system and what he does and just his role on the team. And I got to sit behind the bench for it. Normally the media is up in the lower 200 level in the corner of the gym. I was kitty corner directly behind the Michigan bench, literally essentially on it, sitting with Jacob, watching him. He's worked in the computer during the game. He's on the iPad during the game. Different coaches are looking to him and asking him things. He's pulling up replays, and it's a really cool, unique role. And in my mind, it's sort of I think he's seen as an X factor or a secret weapon behind the scenes that has Michigan basketball, and that is one of the many reasons Michigan basketball is at near the top of its powers and first or second in every single poll in the country. So just a little behind the curtain peek at a unique job, a unique character, and how Michigan uses him and what he provides to the program.
No doubt. Basketball, we're really looking forward to finally getting a dive into it. I mean, we were kind of planning on really going more basketball heavy over the last, between the Ohio State game and the bowl game, and it just has not been remotely possible because of everything that's gone around it. So
we did like a 45-minute episode 2 weeks ago on basketball. Well, we got really pretty deep into the weeds. And then the next day, and then that night, I think we recorded it in the morning on that Wednesday. And then by that afternoon, Sherrone was fired.
You're right.
That night he was arrested, and we just had to can it. It would have been wholly inappropriate to just release some random, let's talk about the X's and O's of basketball. It's too bad, because that was fun. Everything about this hoop season has been fun. And, it's all going to pick up soon. Big Ten season is right around the corner. Michigan will beat McNeese. I say that famous last words, but I'm very confident this team will beat McNeese. They will be 12-0 for the first time since Michigan was something like 17-0, 18-0. I need to look back at what exactly was, but in the 2013 season which was the last time before this year they were ranked number 1 in the coaches poll, and when they made a run to a national championship game against Louisville. And so I mean, I remember doing a really fun piece about that story for the 10-year anniversary 2 years ago, just talking with Trey Burke and Nick Stauskas and going to Beeline's house, just behind the scenes, and him discussing everything about how that year came together. And Michigan is in the midst of one of those runs right now. Super fun stuff. There's going to be more coaching search. There's a probable cause hearing in January. Unfortunately, this stuff is going to be lingering for some time, but this is the number 1 basketball team in the country in the coaches poll. I would argue it should be in the AP poll. That's fine. And we will be turning our attention to the fun basketball stuff, I assure you.
Absolutely. Well said. And we'll hopefully talk to you guys sometime in the new year, most likely now. I mean, if they hire a new coach, we'll figure something out. But we hope to have that whole thing resolved and we can move on and just kind of talk X's and O's with that too. So stick with us. Lots of good stuff coming up over the next few weeks on Hail Yes. Thank you to Robin Chan, our editor of the podcast, who makes it all happen with the audio and a million other different things. So thank you to him. Thank you to our acting sports editor, Ryan Ford. Just an absolute beast, like I always like to say. And thank you to our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, who pulls the strings and makes it all happen at the Free Press. So with that, we'll talk to you guys in the near future. Have a great holiday and enjoy the basketball and the football and all the different sports going on. We'll talk to you guys very soon.